This video will give you everything you need to think about to get perfect audio at home when recording your piano. Okay, maybe not exactly perfect because that's really subjective, but certainly to get the very best results from whatever we have at hand. Are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. I do have an entire playlist of videos with ideas to help when recording piano at home. However, I thought it'd be well worth trying to do a summary video, if you like, that consolidates the most important parts of each of those videos. Here we'll cover off the following topics plus a power tip right at the end for you. We'll talk about microphones and how to set them up. We'll talk about how to edit a recording. We'll talk about how to add reverberation. We'll talk also about how to add equalisation. And then of course how to combine audio and video files together at the end. And then after all that, I'll give you my power tip. There are chapter markers in the description box for you so that you can skip around the video as you need to. Now, let's start off with what is probably the most common setup that everybody has, which is effectively what I'm doing now, which is using a smartphone. Probably the biggest downside to using your phone to capture your videos is that the audio quality tends not to be really fantastic. You have to remember that the built-in microphone and the software are really optimized to be able to capture your voice for making phone calls. They're not really intended to cope with what you'll get on a piano, where you have everything from very high-pitched, delicate notes to thundering bass notes on occasions. That means that we need some way of being able to capture this wide dynamic range. And I spent a lot of time researching on Google before finally I decided to buy the Shure MV88 condenser microphone. I'm going to show you a short piece of music captured just with the microphone that's on your phone. And then the same piece of music captured with this microphone plugged in, with no processing, no anything else, just the effect of the microphone alone. As I'm sure you can hear, already we have a dramatic improvement in the quality of the audio that we can capture. So for me, I think it's definitely worth having an external microphone, and especially the convenience of a plug-and-play device like the Shure MV88 is great. Now, of course, you can take this a whole lot further. You can buy lots of dedicated equipment, audio recorders, audio interfaces. You can buy lots of standalone microphones. You can buy microphones that plug into your laptop. And I'm not going to do a full talk down over everything that's possible to do here, but whatever you choose to go with finally, the rest of the video applies equally well to that setup. The next thing, of course, we need to think about is the basic settings for the microphone. And generally speaking these days, we'll do that via an app of some description. Now, the Shure MV88 comes with the Motive app, and that basically allows you to get to the microphone settings. And the most important one that will be the same on all microphones and all apps that we look at is making sure we set the gain correctly. Once you've plugged the microphone into your phone and opened the app, if you make noise, you'll see the meters here, and these allow you to see how much noise is being picked up by the microphone. When it goes red, this is bad news because that means that the sound will distort. So we quite simply change the sensitivity by swiping on the input gain here to reduce it or to increase it, however we need. There are a couple of top tips here to remember though. The first thing is set your phone onto airplane mode. This is because the little bleeps and noises that your phone makes all the time in the background will come through on the recording, and that can be so very annoying when you've spent time setting something up and you play it back to yourself and it's full of all of this noise. Second thing, of course, is make sure you've got enough memory left on your phone. However, before we do press record, there are a couple of other things that are worth thinking about, so let's have a think about them now. When you put a microphone in the room, we know very well that that microphone is going to capture every tiny nuance of everything we play and expose it to every person that listens to it when we play it back. So this puts us under even more pressure to try and get it right. But when you're recording, you don't really need to put yourself under that kind of pressure, as there are options to deal with it. It's true to say that very, very little ever comes to our ears that was recorded in a single take. So why should we put ourselves under a lot of pressure to be able to do this? In the days when recordings were stored on old-fashioned tape, being able to cut and splice this tape to get rid of the bits that we didn't really want actually required a lot of skill. However, in the modern world, being able to do this on our computer is now something that is remarkably easy to accomplish. In order to be able to do this, we need to change our mindset ever so slightly. And that is to say, we need to now think about starting to record in order to be able to edit it later. Instead, what we're going to do is, before we even start recording, we're going to define a number of what I've called restore points. So these are points that if we make a mistake, we'll be able to go back to that point and then start again from there in order to try that section again. Once we've defined all of our restore points, all that's then left to do is record. So to do this, we start at the beginning and we keep playing until we make a mistake or until we have a part of the piece that we're not very happy with. What we then do is, rather than starting from the beginning, we go back to the closest restore point and we restart from there. Once we've finished recording, we now simply need to move into the editing process. We're now ready to use a digital audio workstation, and that's basically a piece of software that sits on our laptop and allows us to have pretty much a fully fledged audio studio at home. For Mac users, we have Garageband, which is what I'll use to demonstrate in this video. But whatever software you use, they all work in pretty much the same way. First, create a new project. Add your first track. So pick this microphone icon one. And now import your audio file. If we did well during the recording, then the simplest thing to do now is start from the end and work backwards to the beginning. We identify each of the segments that we intend to use in our final version and cut the audio file accordingly. You can then simply delete all of the outtakes to keep your workspace cleaner. The way I then go about piecing all of these back together is to lay them out on two separate tracks within Garageband. Create a new track with duplicate settings. This is very important as you want each track to be identical. Next, position the fragments, these are called regions in Garageband, along the tracks, with each subsequent region being on a different track. It'll then look something like this, with each region slightly overlapping from the previous one, as we've made splits just before and just after the restore point. Use the overlapping part of them to get properly aligned so that the next region starts just at the right point. Now we're going to use the editor to merge them together. To do this, we're going to use what is called volume automation on each track. We use this to effectively turn down the volume on one region and up on another so that they blend together when played. We need to very carefully determine the right point at which to do this. Use your eyes, look at the waveform carefully and find a place where it's quieter. Now we click on Show Automation, and a line now appears the length of the track. This line represents the volume. By clicking on the line with a mouse, it adds a dot. You then find a different point and click again. You're then able to drag either up or down, so up for louder and down for quieter. You can add as many dots as you like in order to manipulate the volume. By doing this carefully, you can make the transition pretty much seamless. Once you have done it for all fragments, simply export the result into a new file, and you're good. The next step then is to add some audio effects to our file, and the first of these is called Reverberation. Now, this is remarkably simple to do once we know where to look in our software and what to be looking for. So what we're going to try to do electronically is to take the piano sound that we got from our practice room, from our lounge, wherever we recorded it, and modify it so that it sounds more like a piano that was played in a concert hall or in a church or in another large, luxurious room. The first thing we do is we create a project. We add a track, and then we import our audio file. Once we've done this, we can double-click on the file that we've imported like this, and underneath we'll have an option to select what they call plugins. Out of interest, a plugin really used to actually mean that it was a separate piece of equipment, so a separate box that you would need to plug in, literally plug in with wires to the other recording equipment that you had. Now, of course, it's all just done with software. No equipment's needed at all. We'll select the Reverb plugin, and let's choose Platinum Verb from the drop-down list that we've got available. Within this plugin, you'll then see there are lots of presets from which to choose. You simply click on the little arrow here that gives you the list. And you can see here things like a big room or church. All a preset does is basically it's a set of values that have been worked out by a professional audio engineer that will represent the kind of space that they describe here. So for piano recordings, I quite like the wooden verb. You just let your music play and you choose one after another to see which one you like the most. You can turn the plugin on and you can turn it off using the button here, and this helps you compare before and after. Our next step then is to improve the overall balance of the piano. Done carefully, we can boost maybe the lower registers, the middle registers, the higher registers, depending on our room and our piano. And this is done with something called equalisation. Anybody of my age will remember those familiar graphic equalisers we used to get on our CD players and record players. Basically, just a set of sliders or knobs that allow you to boost or reduce the strength of certain parts of the sound. So for example, you can turn up the bass, you can turn up the treble, you can turn up the mid-range, or indeed you can turn them all down. The downside, of course, to this is that you need fairly good ears to be able to work out how to get it just perfect with the different mix of sounds that are possible. You'll find that there are also lots and lots of presets available within the digital audio workstation that you use. Garageband provides an equalisation plugin in the same way as we had the Reverberation plugin last week. Within this plugin, there are then lots of presets from which you're able to select. You'll be even more pleased to hear there are quite a few of these presets that are specifically designed to be used with piano music. The reason there are quite a few different presets for the piano is that, of course, it's not an exact science. A lot will depend on the kind of piano that you're playing, the room you played it in, the kind of music that you're playing. So basically, you'll go through the different presets, listening to the piano with each one of them, and then you'll choose the one that sounds the best to you. Let's open up our Garageband project, and I'll show you how to apply equalization to it now. Go down to the plugins, the same place we added reverberation last week. Choose the Channel EQ plugin, and the EQ window will open for you. If this is the first time you've used it, then in the top left of the window you'll see Default. Click on the selection arrow just next to it, and then you'll see a list which appears. And in this list you'll find keyboards. If you select keyboards, here you'll see your other available options. You simply select from the list and press play. There's an on-off button here in the left-hand corner of the EQ window, which allows you to turn it on and off so you can hear what it sounds like with and then without, if this helps you make a decision about which preset you like. Once you've found the preset that works best for you, you're good to go. Once you're happy, all that's left to do is export the result to a file. To do this, we click Share in the menu, then Export Song to Disk. We select where we'd like to save the file, and then job done. This now then gives us our finalized audio file. We took the raw recording, we got rid of the parts we didn't want, we've added reverberation, we've added equalization. And I'm sure you'll agree that none of these things was particularly difficult to do once we knew where to look. So if you don't have Garageband and you have something else, all you'll need to do is Google the terms. So for example, I recently upgraded to Cubase to do some of my audio editing, and because I'd never used it before, I simply Googled how to add reverberation in Cubase, and I got a whole list of things. And as you might imagine, some of the things that come up are where the presets are and where the plugins are. Now, of course, if our end result is that we want to publish a video and not just an audio recording, the next thing we need to do is combine this audio file with our video recording. So let's have a quick look at how we might do that. And for this demonstration, I'll use iMovie, which again is free for Mac users. Again, we're going to create a project. We will import our audio and video files. We put them into the timeline, which is just like what we did when we imported the audio file into the track in GarageBand. We just then need to adjust the position of them so that they're in sync. And even this is simple. If you look carefully, you can see the wave pattern. So that is like the picture of the sound on the movie file, and you can also see the same wave pattern on the audio file. And this gives you a clue as to where the sound actually is and will help you to line the two up. To make this easier, notice this small zoom slider here. If you move this to the right, you'll find that fine-tuning becomes a lot simpler when you move the audio file around to sync it with the video. All we then need to do is delete the audio from the original video file. So right-click onto the video, select Detach Audio, and once it's detached, we just go in and we delete it. And of course, once we've lined up the beginning of the video, we can then easily trim out any of the bits that we don't want from the video recording because they were outtakes, and make sure everything lines up nicely. This then gives us an end-to-end video with greatly enhanced audio. And now then for my power tip that I promised you. One thing is that if we have a bad recording, then no matter what we do with it afterwards, it won't turn into a very good one, will it? And one of the things that influences the recording, perhaps more than anything else, is where we choose to place the microphone. So let's have a few thoughts about that quickly before we close. Perhaps the first thing to consider, of course, is the type of piano we have. You know, it might be a digital, it could be an acoustic upright, or even a grand piano. And all of these will need a different approach. In the case of a digital piano, one of the biggest issues can actually be the noise of the keyboard. You'll find that very often you get a sort of thudding noise because of the way they're built, and this gets picked up disproportionately on the microphone when you try to record. And of course, the closer you have the microphone to the piano, the louder that effect becomes and the more off-putting it is. And sometimes if you have the microphone actually on the piano, it becomes almost deafening in a funny sort of way. Now, an interesting option, of course, that you have with a digital piano, depending on the make and model, is that you can often record an audio file directly in the piano and then download it to your computer. I know, for example, on my Yamaha Clavinova, this is possible. And that way you get a perfect recording of the sound of the piano with absolutely no need to worry about any thudding or any noise that may be in your room. When we think about an acoustic upright piano, of course, the soundboard more often than not is against the wall. I mean, that's why they were built in the way that they were built. But you've also got the fact that the piano has a lid that can be up or down, and there's also a front that you can take on or off. With a grand piano, of course, you even have two lids that can be open and open to varying degrees. So that's something you can think about. Of course, the room in which you're going to record needs to be taken into consideration when you think about where to put the microphone. So let's cover off a few of the basic things. When you look at a professional recording studio, of course, this has been fully soundproofed, it's been acoustically treated, it's the ideal environment for being able to record sound. However, most of us aren't that blessed with where we have. We're stuck with our normal lounge or maybe a hall where we're recording. One of the first things, of course, that we need to consider is the level of background noise in the room. So this could be anything from a refrigerator, for example, the air conditioning unit, the pump on the central heating system. All of these make noise, and you've also got the noise that comes from the outside. So you might have neighbours doing their hoovering or mowing the lawn. You've got cars or even sometimes planes passing. You've got children playing. All of these things add to a level of background noise that sometimes is unavoidable. It's actually quite easy to assess the level of background noise in your room by simply plugging the microphone into your phone and looking at the monitors on whichever app you're using that show you the noise that's being picked up or the sound that's being picked up by the microphone. So then, how do we take these things into account when we make our decision? To be honest, the first thing I do is think about the room, especially about the aspect of background noise. If this is something that is going to be unavoidable for you, then the simplest solution is to put the microphone as close as possible to the piano and perhaps, if possible, even inside the piano with the lid closed. That way, you're best able to protect the microphone from all of this outside noise pollution. The next thing, of course, to think about is, does the piano actually sound good in the room? You know, if you have a larger instrument in a smaller room, then it soon overpowers the space, and all of the sound bouncing off the walls when you record will actually spoil the overall recording. Again, this is a scenario where having the microphone as close as possible to the piano, and perhaps even inside, is a good way of getting rid of this unwanted acoustic effects of the room. If you're in a nice hall or you've got a nice big lounge with plenty of absorbent material and the piano sounds great in there, then why not try to capture more of the effects of the room by placing the microphone further away from the instrument? The solution that I most generally use is to position the microphone just over the lip of the curved part of the tail of the piano. I also have the lid half down, and this means I can almost completely eradicate any kind of background noise from the room, and also if there's the odd passing neighbour, you really can't hear it so much. Of course, the only safe way to know where the best place to put the microphone is to just try a few test recordings. Every room is different, every piano is different. All of the longer videos that I've showed you excerpts from here are mentioned in the comments for you, so if there's a topic that is of particular interest to you and you want to see the longer video, you can easily go and look it up. And perhaps the last thing to mention is that I do have a free 3-volume ebook on recording your piano that covers all of this stuff in a lot of great detail, and I've put the download link for that in the comments below for you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comments, and of course, if you're not already subscribed to Tommy's Piano Corner, please do, and don't forget the little bell icon so you're notified of new videos as and when they're released. I do thank you very much for watching today, and look forward to seeing you very soon.